So there's a lot of confusion right now, especially around the sacrament of reconciliation. So there's a good chance you're probably distressed that you can't get to confession right now. And I get it. It's a distressing thing, right? This is something that we've relied on, and for good reason. Why? Because the sacraments, they always work. The sacraments are guarantees of God's presence in our lives. When you confess your sins honestly to the priest, and then the priest says that prayer of absolution over you, all your sins are completely wiped away. Okay, so what do we do now that we can't get to reconciliation or confession or penance? And you may have heard some things that sound kind of confusing. You may have heard something like, oh, Pope Francis says you don't need confession to have your sins forgiven. And maybe some of your Protestant friends, God love them, God bless them, maybe they're kind of bothering you about this, right? Okay. Here's what Pope Francis said, and here's what we mean. And this is something that it isn't new. This isn't some new kind of teaching. This has been a part of church teaching for forever. If you cannot make it to confession through no fault of your own, and guess what, guys? It's not your fault you can't make it to confession right now, all right? If you can't make it to confession through no fault of your own, make an act of contrition. And specifically, attempt to make an act of perfect contrition. And what that is telling God that you are genuinely sorry for your sins. Not just because you're afraid of punishment, but because you've offended the God who loves you and loves you deeply. So you say some sort of prayer, and there's formulas online, but you can make one up, just saying, God, I am genuinely sorry for my sins. Please forgive me. And then also add to that you intend to go to confession as soon as you are able. And what this kind of prayer does, it's like an emergency measure. It holds you over until you can get to confession. So let's say you did a whole bunch of sins, right? Because guess what, we're sinners, we do a whole bunch of sins. And then you made this act of perfect contrition. And you were to die before you could get to confession. Well, you had every intention to go to confession. And God knows that and understands that, so that prayer is a safeguard for that moment in time. So why don't we talk about this so often? Why is maybe this is the first time you're hearing it? Because you can imagine how this kind of prayer could be abused, right? We may say to ourselves, oh yeah, I'm sorry for my sins, now I'll get to confession, but Saturday passes, and then another Saturday passes. Well, I'm sorry, in that case, if you're not taking this seriously, no, of course your sins aren't going to be forgiven, because you're not truly sorry. So what this act of perfect contrition will do in this time is it will hold us over until we can get back to confession.